Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I am here with friends to talk about women's professional road cycling. We are back for the first group pod of the 2025 season. We've got Aussie Nats behind us. We got Tour Down Under coming up. And of course, I have with me the lovely Gracie Elvin.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be starting off this new season. It's going to be a good one.
And you were on the ground at Aussie Nats and will be on the ground at TDU. So I'm so excited to hear what you have to say about the vibes. But first, we also have a very special person joining us today. Lauren Rowney was unable to make it, so we called up Georgie Howe.
Hello, it's your favorite substitute teacher reporting for duty, wheeling in the TV and putting a movie on. It would be way more entertaining than that, I promise.
What movie would you play if you were a substitute teacher and you got called in last minute? What movie would
That's
you play?
That's a good question.
I think in Australia, I think Gracie, you can back me up on this. The Castle was played quite a bit because they tried to pawn it off as educational for legal studies and terra nullius, all that land right law. But I think nowadays it's a tough one. What about you guys?
Oh, I would say Princess Bride. It's a classic. Good one. And it goes for so long. It would keep people entertained for ages.
I think I would play the Claire Danes, Leonardo DiCaprio, Romeo and Juliet.
Well, that's pretty violent.
A bit of Baz Luhrmann.
I mean, I would hope that I was a substitute teacher for high schoolers and not anyone younger than that. Anyone younger, I don't know, maybe I'm slapping on A Land Before Time and scarring them for life.
That is a great film. I forgot about that film. I'm gonna watch that tonight. That's epic.
It's such a good one. It's such a classic. It's so good. I heard that they're remaking it actually, which I don't know.
Don't do it.
Some things you just can't touch, you know?
Don't touch it. It's inconceivable.
Yeah.
Do that.
You keep saying this word. I don't know if it means what you think it means. I'm just kidding.
Inconceivable. Well done. Like that.
Yeah, good job, team. I think I'd probably do.
Anyone that probably races now and listens to this pod has no idea what we're talking about.
Or if they do, they can join a very exclusive club.
Yeah. I mean, the last episode of 2024, we started off talking about yogurt. So I feel like we're just keeping that going. We've continued with the pre-racing chaos. And honestly, I think it makes it more entertaining.
I mean, was it the Byron yogurt you were talking about? That's good yogurt.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. Yeah, fucking love that yogurt, man. So good. I've been trying to recreate the consistency. No. I'm stopping myself. Okay, we're gonna talk about racing in Australia. So only right that we have two Aussies with us today. And Gracie commentated on Aussie Nationals. Phenomenal job, by the way. Dream team, you and Matilda Reynolds and Bridie O'Donnell. You guys were amazing.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Bridie is such a good host. So it was really cool to have her in that seat. And Matilda is an awesome addition. Obviously, we know her well and she's been on this pod a few times, but she's just such a natural. And I think, we get to work as a trio for the rest of the season for the women's races. So that's pretty cool. Very cool to have an all-women commentary team.
I just want you guys to do Eurosport as well.
Yes.
How do I make that happen? I'm going to start the petition now.
There's just no comment from Gracie on that one.
It'd just be so awesome. Anyway, okay. Aussie Nationals was last week, so we have crowned, two new elite national champions and one repeat in the criterium, but we'll start with the time trial. Grace Brown was not there to defend her title. She is retired. Congratulations to Grace Brown, as always. But Brodie Chapman took the win by just over 30 seconds. And that's a huge victory for Brodie. I think we can talk about the new location and how that maybe affected turnout, especially for the time trial. But Brodie, she won the road race a couple years ago. She's such an incredible rider. She had a really rough couple of seasons with illness and bad luck. And so for her to take this win and her first race in UAE Team ADQ colors, is just love to see it.
Yeah, she did a phenomenal job. I spoke to Brodie afterwards. She absolutely loved that course. It was really rolling, so you could keep a lot of speed. She told me she ran a 58 tooth chainring, And I think Amber, who came second, ran a 62th. So it was like a course that really favored momentum. And Brodie's been working on that craft for years. So it's just desserts for her. She deserved that win. And I can't wait to see what she does in time trials in the season. I haven't looked if there's any long form ones coming up, but she will really shine in them. Anything between 15 and 40 minutes will be her wheelhouse for sure.
Yeah, like it was probably one of the smallest start lists that we've seen for a championship time trial, but like you still have to do everything right to win it because there were still some quality bike riders there. And like we've talked about this plenty of times over the years, like Aussie Nationals is tough for the Aussies because it's so early and you're just trying to play that game between getting the result you want and then finding those peaks the rest of the year once you get to Europe as well. And also having an off season and recovering from the season before and having that downtime mentally and physically. And like I would assume for someone like Brodie, that's really important to her is to come home and switch off and have some fun. But to have that in the back of your mind that you've got this awesome opportunity to take a national title, she would have, still been turning over those stones pretty early, which, is hard to do if you felt like you haven't fully gotten over the season that's just been. So credit to her because it's such a technical, discipline. It's you have to put so much into time trialing. It's not just about being super fit. It's like so much time on the bike and just dialing in everything to go well on the day. So yeah, it's cool to see her take that title. And also, as you mentioned, she's put in that work over the years as well. It's not that she's just gone, oh, I see this opportunity, I'm going to take it. No, she's seen this from a long way out. She's asked for help from Lidl Trek and now UAE to go after that ambition. And Grace was also instrumental in this and in being a bit of a mentor as well last year, particularly at the World Championships, the last race together, where Brodie could really just soak up as much as possible. So that's really cool to see her taking that mantle over for the Aussies. And she had some really good time trials last year, Brodie. It's not like she's just stepping up now. Like it's been a while coming, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what else she can do for the season, particularly if she gets a few more opportunities in the time trials.
I remember the Giro time trial specifically where she got third behind Elise Longoborghini, who won, and Grace was second, and Brodie was third. And it was like she'd come off of a really good time trial already at Tour de Suisse, I believe it was, where she was seventh. And that was after kind of a long period, I think, of illness, if I'm remembering correctly. And she came into Tour de Suisse and kind of was surprised in the time trial with her form. And then going into the Giro, she had better preparation and to come third in that one. I remember that one specifically being a huge deal for her. But like, especially in the Australian TT, she was third in 2023, second last year, first this year. So she really, the progress and the kind of chipping away at it is obvious even on the page,
Oh, she's persistent, like dogged persistence for sure. And like as you were saying, Gracie, I don't like using the term sacrifice, but I think you do over the Aussie summer leading into nationals with like Christmas, family time, in preparation for a race like Nats. So yeah, a lot of solid time on the bike, but no doubt I think her partner Dan would have been on the moto pacing her, so maybe they had some time together, quality time together that way.
And yeah, Amber Pate second. So kind of kicked off a really incredible week of racing for Amber Pate. Anya Lowe was third. So a full World Tour sweep of the podium. And yeah, like Gracie said, it was kind of a small turnout. There was only 12 riders to start and 10 riders to finish. But I guess we could talk a little bit about the change of venue. So you've had nationals in Ballarat for 18, 20 years. And so this is the first time in a really long time that the race has been elsewhere. And it's in Perth, which, if people aren't familiar with Australia, is like the opposite side of the country from Sydney.
I think it's the most remote capital city in the world, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of out there, a little bit out there. There are a lot of really good cyclists in Perth, from Perth, but kind of compared to where I think a lot of the riders, at least that we're familiar with, in the Women's World Tour, are located, it's a bit of a trek.
Yeah, and I think the time trial taking two bikes to Perth it's a long flight. There's expense around that, so that might have contributed to the small start list. But yeah, the new courses I think definitely caught a lot of the riders off guard in how they would respond to a race.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk a little bit about that with the road race because I think national championships in general are a weird one and they're raced really weird. But when you have the same course for so long and then you throw a new course at the riders, like it's always going to be a little bit of a crapshoot what exactly is going to happen tactically. Before we had the road race, we had the criterium, which is, not really, it's kind of an English speaking country thing. Like the US does it, Britain does it, and Australia does it, but it's not really a thing in Europe to have criterium national champion. But it's a fun thing to throw into the weekend. And Amber Pate was just like phenomenal on the day. She was incredible.
Yeah, she took advantage of that bunch situation. And I guess it's not even that Jaco had overwhelming numbers in that race. Like there was other teams there with okay numbers, but of course Jaco had good numbers, but they took the race on straight away. They didn't race negatively. They were the aggressors. And Amber Pate just saw that good moment quite early on. And it was quite obvious to see that was definitely their plan, is to have her maybe one or two of the others to be doing that. But I reckon they were pretty keen to get Pate up the road early, and she jumped clear. She took only one rider with her. It probably would have been good if they had one or two more, but like they worked together so well and the bunch just scrambled behind that they never saw them again, and they were out of sight too. And we had 6 corners, I think, instead of 4 like we used to have back in Ballarat. So it was easier to get out of sight as well.
Yeah, I think it operated way differently to the what's it, the crit called in Buninyong? I forget the name of the main street, but it's just
Sturt Street.
Dirt Street, Ballarat. Yeah, I mean, like even when you're away and like you've gone around the corners, you can still see the rider on the other side of the course. So you kind of always know where they are. This course was very much like with all the twists and turns and the narrow straights as well. I've spoken to a few people after the race, and the narrow, like the straights were quite narrow. So even when you were in a bunch there, it was quite difficult to move up. So Amber took initiative really early, and on a course like that, it just rewards the breakaway in tenfold. And Kira Will, yeah, she had a front row seat to Amber kicking off the front, and she was like, "Well, there's my ride." And then just was like, I better hold this shoe, and held it. And yeah, she rode brilliantly and was able to get up the road as well for second.
My favorite thing was Amber's post race interview. So good.
Yeah.
If you like that one, you should see it the first time she won the Crit Nationals. You should go back and watch that interview.
Oh goodness.
Man, she was so
very
funny.
excited.
Yeah, it was just like she couldn't. It was like just pure word vomit, and I loved every second of it.
high octave word vomit.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a quick chat about what the commissaires did in the crit,
please.
because I didn't love that, to be honest. I was not commentating this race, and I was just watching from home before I'd flown out. And the commissaires just decided, they must have decided that they were going to pull the bunch and let them race for third and then let Amber and Kira fight it out. But Amber had attacked Kira Will and got away solo, and then the commissaires gave the bunch 1 lap to go, and I'm pretty sure they did not give them 2 laps to go. Like I think it was, they only saw 1 lap board and it said 1 lap to go, and I think that would have been very confusing for the bunch. And so they had to scramble and sprint for third, and it was lucky that they weren't all over the road, because Amber was coming through and she could have, got caught up in all of the confusion. Luckily she didn't. But I think it was also a shame, because in her post-race interview she said that she was starting to die, and like it was 10 minutes cut short. The whole race was 10 minutes shorter than what it should have been. And it could have actually played out differently if they'd gone for 10 whole more minutes, because that doesn't seem like a lot, but in a crit it is a lot. And if Amber had caught the bunch, Kira might have then caught the bunch, and how would that have played out? Even if the commissaires didn't let them catch the bunch, they should have at least given the bunch more time to decide what they were doing. Maybe 2 laps to go, and then they should have just given Amber and Kira 1 lap to go because it could have been so messy. I don't know. It just left such a bad taste in my mouth afterwards that I was like, I don't think that was the right thing to do. And we had Sarah Gigante on the Discord bringing up some of the UCR rules, which I thought was quite good. She's so good with some of that knowledge, and yeah, I think they actually didn't do what they were supposed to do anyway.
Yeah, I spoke to some riders afterwards, and like it obviously when a break goes and you're not in it, you're frustrated about that. Like, of course, there was frustration about that, but where the frustration really sat was with how the organizers handled the finish. Like they weren't given the time at all to organize a sprint. The race was cut. I think it was even 13 minutes short if you count the 3 laps that it was 50 minutes plus 3 laps.
Mm.
Um, so then, like, a lot can happen, as you said, Gracie, a lot can happen in 13 minutes, and they really denied the riders that opportunity.
10 minutes, like, I don't know. Of the spectators, that's really boring, but she could have died. She could have blown up, and Kira could have won. I don't know. It was just like I've never seen a race finish like that before at that level.
Yeah, not at
It was,
national level,
yeah,
no.
not great.
And when the race is only like an hour long in the first place, that's 13 minutes is a massive chunk.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
criteriums are, in case people didn't know, criteriums are short. It's like an hour on a very short circuit.
The one positive thing that was good to see was that Maeve Plouffe was able to fight for on her own and get third from that bunch kick. And I think she's had a rough couple of years, so I think that was really good for her to be kind of feeling like she's back again.
Yeah, it was really good to see Maeve back in it. And then yeah, we'll talk about her rude kit that she wore in the road race. When we talk about the road race.
Yeah, let's talk about the road race. So the road race is over the weekend, and as we said, new course after many, many years of the same. So made for some pretty interesting tactics. What was the course like, Gracie? Because you were on the ground. You got to kind of see what were the vibes. How were people feeling about the new course, and also just like how was the turnout, fans and rider wise?
It felt like it was a good vibe. So I'll just say that first up. It was a really good vibe. I think in future they can do very small things to make that vibe better for the crowd, to bring them in a little bit more. There were minimal food trucks, and like the fan zone was in a kind of good spot, but not the best spot, and just things like that. So there was actually heaps of people out on the day, on the Sunday for the elite races. But I think the different to Bunningham, when everyone compacts onto that second half of the climb, they were kind of all spread out over a lot of the course. So I think there was heaps of people there, but maybe it just looked sparse because they were so spread out. But the finish line shoot and the climb, it had a good atmosphere. There was heaps of people out. There was a screen that people kept going from the fence to the screen and watching. Um, so like overall, I think it was a successful event from a lot of different angles. And yeah, like I said, a few kinks to iron out, but nothing major. But in terms of the course, I think it was really good, actually. I think on paper it didn't look too hard, but in real life it was a lot harder. It really reminded me of a world championship type course. Like maybe not quite as hard as Glasgow, but certainly that nice feeling of a championship event. And they'd relaid the road, so it was hot mix, and that made it fast. But it was, one of those courses that you really didn't get much time to recover anywhere. So it really sapped the legs. And there was a few little rises here and there that, just killed you lap after lap, as well as those longer climbs coming into the finish. So I think the women's race, yeah, the opportunists really made the most of that course. And we can definitely talk more about tactics. But I feel like maybe they didn't pay enough attention to the under 23 men's race the day before, but I think it was a mistake to let any decent break go on that course because it was so hard to pull it back, especially if you didn't have a team to do so. So yeah, there was a lot of losers on the day. I'm going to say that, but overall, I love that tenacity of that group of five. And like I said on commentary, all of them rode so well. Like they all were strong. No one really put a foot wrong tactically. They were all trying to ride to their own strengths and stuff. So we can certainly talk more about the tactics of that breakaway as well. But like, what an amazing opportunity for those riders, and they're all deserving of better contracts because they were strong and smart and savvy. So it was cool to see that play out. But yeah, certainly some losers on the day.
Yeah, so we had a break of 5 that went early in the race, and they stuck all the way to the end, and the winner came from that break of 5. Lucinda Stewart took the win ahead of Ella Simpson. And Stewart rides for the Levallois Jayco Conti team, which I'm not sure if they kind of teamed up with the World Tour team for the Nationals. But there was 2 of them in the race, and I believe 4 of the Levallois Jayco riders, maybe 3. So they had the numbers in theory if they did team up as one team. But the like main chasers behind were Amber Pate and Amanda Spratty, who finished 6th and 7th, a little over 2 minutes back. And then you had kind of the rest of the field coming in almost 5 minutes back. So they got a pretty big break to begin with and then held it all the way through the race. And Nationals is, because Nationals is such a big deal, being national champion is such a big deal for every single rider who lines up dreams of winning Nationals. They want to wear the green and gold or whatever colors their national, their flag is, their nationals is. Everyone wants that opportunity to represent their country on the world stage in that jersey. So it's a huge deal, the race, regardless. But then you throw in that, especially if you're coming from the World Tour, like Brody, for example, she wouldn't have had any teammates. Little Trek, I think, only had 3. There's like very small teams. And then normally you have Australian teams or national teams that show up with huge numbers, which kind of tips the scales and makes things even weirder. So I think, especially at Aussie Nats, there's been multiple times where it's been a relatively unknown rider, like when Sarah Gigante won, for example, or Nicole Frayne, for example, as well. Like there's weird tactics that play out, and I feel like this was not that weird of tactics. It was like multiple things came together to make it a good opportunity for a small group to get off the front, and it even better if it's like a small group of unknowns with no World Tour rider in there.
Yeah, I think when I turned on, I went over and watched it with a bunch of mates, and I walk in and I think it's 30 Ks into the race and the break's already gone. And they were just working super well together. And the best thing about that break is that they're all just so young. I don't think Cassia is so young, but the rest of them, yeah, it's the next generation of Australian cycling. And to see them really taking the race on like that and making it exciting, and working so well together and working so maturely was awesome. And to see Lucy race like she raced with that amount of pressure on her shoulders, like, I mean, Gracie, like in that team, nationals is everything. Like getting the green and gold jersey in that team is everything. So we fly our staff out from Europe for it. It's a big deal. And so for Lucy to know that and still race like she raced, yeah, I all the credit to her.
I don't think she would have started with that pressure on her. I assume that Stewart and Coupland, the other Continental, Mackenzie Coupland, they would have, been given instructions to do your best, go into breakaways, or we'll
Yeah.
use you
Be
in the
active
race as
early.
support
Yeah.
riders. Like they would have had a number of tasks to do. And she did that. She ticked that box, but then she had to figure out, oh crap, now I'm actually going to have to try and win this. She comes from a cycling mad family, so she's no stranger to tactics. She's been racing for a long time. We know that she's got a good kick on her, and still would have been though quite scary in that group just to not want to screw it up because you've got those colors on now. She's not in ARA or a team like that anymore. You're in that Jayco team, albeit she's still the Continental team. And that was something that was going through my mind in commentary was, okay, is Jayco actually happy with this because she's not in the pro team? She's doing a great job for the team to support someone like Ruby, but ultimately, do they want to A, risk her trying to go for the win from that group? Is she actually the strongest? Can she be outclimbed? Is she cramping? They would have had to go through all of those questions because she's, young. She's got oodles of talent, but like it's still a big ask to get to the end of a day like that and still win. And then B, do they want the national champs jersey in the Conti team and not the pro team? Because yes, the Jayco team loves to get the national champs jerseys every summer if they can to take to Europe. And she'll get to show that off in Europe, but not really at the big World Tour races. So I was wondering if that would be going through their mind as well. And I was waiting to see what Jayco would do once that break started to blow out, of whether they'd be happy or not. And they were showing that they were happy. They were backing her in, potentially playing a bit of the SD Works card of seeing who broke first, so they didn't have to work. And I think that they probably had a bit of that hope in the back of their mind, or in the back pocket maybe, of thinking, well, if someone else pulls this back for us, that's good for us, but we're not going to do it. So it really shut the race down for everyone else. And we saw Trek probably doing the most amount to bring it back with a little bit of help here and there, but it was too little too late. But yeah, it's a tough one because you can certainly in hindsight point fingers at who should have done what. But if you just won out like Brody or Roy or Tiff, would you have gone with that break? Probably not, because they were all young riders, all unknown riders. And then once it blows out, how much then do you put into it? They probably should have gotten it organized earlier, but they were probably wondering what Jayco was really thinking. And it's tough. No one really had the numbers or the firepower at the end of the day. And the course, of course, played into that, of it being difficult to bring back anything anyway.
Yeah, I think there's a chronic issue at Australian Nationals, whether or not Jayco indeed have the majority numbers. Everyone does tend to look to them to fix it or not fix a situation. And in that situation, I think those calculations were definitely going through the team car with Gene Bates and Jess Allen at the helm there. Whether or not they're comfortable with losing the break. And I'm sure they backed her in, but whether or not politically it was the right move for the team, and if they wanted in which team did they want the jersey? Like, it's technically within Jayco, but at what level? Like, you want the jersey at the Tour de France, you want it at the Giro d'Italia, you want it at the Vuelta. It's not going to be there. So then I did question that then when Amber got off the front, was that them making a last ditch effort to then rectify that situation? Because I did see like Ruby was having a stab, Amber was having a stab, but Ruby was just being marked by Alex. Josie also had a few stabs, but Amber was able to slip off the front with Spratty. So I wonder, and they really were giving it a nudge. I mean, Gracie, you were there. You could probably speak to this a bit more, but like from the TV, they looked like they were seriously giving it some.
Yeah, and maybe on Bunningham they could have gotten back to that group, but maybe. But that gap was a lot. Like,
6 minutes, I think.
the time gap wasn't exactly accurate on the screen, but we can guess it was about 5 minutes at a lot of the time, which is a lot, on only a 109-kilometer race. So, that front group really would have had to sit up, and they weren't showing that they wanted to play cat and mouse until right at the end, which was, very smart of them to just keep pushing until that they knew that they could start playing the game. But yeah, Spratty and Pate, it was a good move. Like you said, probably a last ditch effort from Jayco just to have that plan B in case Lucinda suddenly blew up or had cramping or had a mechanical or anything. So I think Jayco could have had egg on their face if just one little thing didn't go right and Lucy didn't get the win. But they backed her in, and I rate that too. I rate that they backed her in and they gave that confidence in her, because that's going to sow some really good seeds going forward in that relationship with her in the future. And I wouldn't be surprised if they bring her in for a few pro races this year anyway, to be honest, with that jersey, but also because, why not? It's like a reward for that effort and just fostering that talent. So hopefully they don't take her to too many. So they just keep simmering her away. But yeah, I don't know. Like, It's not like Buninyong when you can just bring that gap down really quickly on that climb if you're a spratty, you know.
Yeah, you can't. It's that climb's not long enough. It's certainly attritional, but it's not long enough for them to really make a dent in that gap. Otherwise
Mm.
you're going too fast. You're down the waterfront. You're going too fast. Would have been interesting in that on that course if the wind had really picked up down on the waterfront there. I don't know how it looked exposed from the flags. But yeah, if we might have had echelon action for the first time at Nats in a very long time.
Another thing too was we were wondering who Trek would be riding for, Spratty or
Yeah.
Loretta. And I think that was quite clear, maybe halfway through the race, that it was for Spratty, not Loretta. But I'm not sure how Felicity Wilson Heffernan is going, but I wanted to see her on the front a bit more. And I wanted to see Anya Lowe sacrificing for Manly more. I think that those riders needed to act really quickly. That was kind of the responsibility was on Trek and AG Insurance to just sacrifice one rider and do that properly from early on, regardless of who was in the break. So I think that's a lesson learned, and I'm criticizing harshly, but only in hindsight, because I think going forward they're going to race that course differently in the future.
Yeah, it was like definitely a prospecting mission for all the races that we saw, from the TT to the crit to the road race. Everyone was like, yeah, first time for everyone to see how it would respond. So I think, yeah, tactics will definitely be different next year. We'll probably see a really dynamic race from the beginning next year, because everyone will recognize that the early break gets away and stays away. So maybe we'll end up seeing like a bigger bunch come to the line. I'm not sure, but still a great race to watch.
How would you guys win it? If you were racing, if you were lining up, how would you win it? What would your plan be?
Ooh, put me on the spot.
Yeah, no pressure.
Gracie, you go first.
I would back myself in a small group sprint. So ideally, I would be in Lucinda's position and go early, but in more ideally, we would have better numbers in teams across the board, and you'd wait for that early break to be pulled back, and you'd have a rider in there that was not pulling through heaps, like Lucinda was for her teammates. She was also doing that team job in the breakaway. That then if someone like Ruby was able to, or Pate was able to jump across, then you're going to be that extra firepower at the end and help them in that kick and that any attacks that go late in the race. So yeah, I'd like to play the numbers game and hopefully win from a small group sprint.
I wonder if Trek had backed Loretta instead, if the race would have been completely different, because Spratty has so much experience that I think she would have been more keen to jump on the front and do more work early on if the team was just all in for Loretta from the start, and to put Fliss up there for the two of them to manage that gap before it got out to 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think Trek. There's a bit of a theme of them missing the break at Nat. They missed it in the crit. They missed it in the roadie. I think they'll definitely learn from this moving forward. Keen to see how they both perform at TDU as well.
Yeah, I mean, well, do you want to tell us how you'd win it, Georgie? And then we can talk about
how I'd win it. I'd probably wait for. Well, I don't have. If you ask any of my teammates, I'm a bit of a freight train in the bunch. Like I'm not very good at going with the kicks. So I think I'd just suffer through the first 30, 40K as the attacks are going, and maybe an early break gets established. And then before the break blows out to too far, like maybe when it's around 2 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, I'd jump away and try and bridge across, and then maybe do the Durbo and drop my breakaway companions and fine.
Yeah, I was about to say just ride straight past the break. Just keep
straight past
yeah, just keep
on the side of the road, straight past.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly right. No, that's how I would win it.
How does never say never. So looking at how riders rode nationals, and it's a weird it's not a great indication of form going into TDU, especially with the course we have for TDU this year is going to be a little bit more challenging than last year. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But if we're looking at riders who are going into TDU who race nationals, there actually aren't really that many. Brody isn't going to race TDU. She's headed back to Europe now to get ready for the season. But of course, we have Sprati who's going to be there. Sarah Roy is going to be there. We have the Livalula Jayco World Tour riders. They're all going to be there. And so there's a few other non-World Tour riders like Nicole Frayden is riding for the Australian national team, etc. So we have a few riders going over. But is there anything we can tell from the results at nationals before TDU? I don't think so.
They're just frustrated, mate. Like they're just all really frustrated that they didn't get to show their legs. I think the end result of Nats. Every single ride I've talked to is it was also a really messy sprint for what was it, places 6th through to 10th. I just heard like the final sprint was also really messy, so people couldn't properly open up and show their form there as well. So we actually have no idea.
Except for Amber Pate. She's like the only one who coming out of nationals. I'm like, well, she's got some decent legs right now.
Yeah, she's on form.
Like 2nd in the time trial, 1st in the crit, and 6th in the road race, but like win behind the breakaway, basically.
Exactly.
She's the only one. All right, let's go through the course really quick. So the course for TDU this year, we have 3 stages. The first one, well, all 3 of them kind of include a decent amount of elevation, undulation. There's no like last year or the year before, we had a pretty flat first stage, even with some wind, but it was in a bunch sprint. This year, I think the first stage, there's more climbing in the first stage, but it also, in the notes here, from you, Georgie, flagged for echelons. So it's going to be harder than it looks. So that could possibly be a very exciting stage. And then stage 2, we have double Wollonga Hill this year. So they're going to do Wollonga twice in the final 20 kilometers of the race. So last year we only had it once in the third and at the very, very end of the third stage. And that was kind of when Gigante went at the base of Wollonga, the race was over and no one could really challenge her. And that was the GC wrapped up. But this year we have 2 laps of Wollonga in the end of stage 2. And then stage 3 is pretty decently hard circuits of a hilly course. And also from what I remember from a similar where that the third stage is, they have gone up there a lot during TDU. And if it's similar to what I remember in 2019, the roads are very challenging. Like they're windy, they're narrow, so it's not like a classic Australian circuit that's got wide multi-lane roads. So the third stage is also going to be pretty interesting. So I think probably one of my favorite TDU courses so far, even if I do wish it was a stage or 2 longer. But we've got a little bit of something for everyone, and the overall definitely favors climbers with how challenging the second stage finale is. But there's enough of unknown in the first and third stages that I think it could actually go to someone else if there was a team that was going to play if a team doesn't have a strong climber, for example, and they want to mess things up.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I was talking with Annette Edmondson and Carly Taylor, they're both the assistant race directors, earlier today about it. And I just praise them on such a great course. I think it's a really good move to switch the Stirling stage with the Wollonga stage, because we did Stirling last year and it was hard. It's like classics-esque in terms of the rollers and the climbs in there. But because TDU is typically won on time bonuses, people were more concerned about the sprints than they were about getting up the road in the break, because they recognize that Wollonga the next day, probably the wind's going to come on that. So like people were trying to bank their time bonuses on that. And that's another thing about TDU. Like I asked the question of Nettie and Carly, like, do the time bonuses that you can accrue over the full day, does that then outweigh a potential margin that you can get on Wollonga? So is it like, do you have to be a pure climber to win this race, or can you be someone like Ali Wollaston for FDJ and get enough time bonuses under your belt, or like a Ruby, and just keep the climbers within sight going at Wollonga? But it is 2 times up. But yeah, I really like this course. I think it's going to be on fire. Not literally, but
What if, imagine
Hopefully
if they
not.
did like circuits of Wollonga?
yeah,
Just like repeat for, I
Yeah,
don't know,
yeah,
no, don't do that.
70K.
Don't do
no,
that.
Sounds awesome to me. What are you talking about?
it's a wall.
Yeah, it's pretty hard. It's going to be hard to do it twice.
Yeah,
Not, it'll still be a good race. I don't think it'll be negative. I think the women's level, even with a lot of riders coming out in their very early form, pre-season form, it'll still be tough and raced hard. And there's plenty of riders that are in form that is going to make it miserable for others. uh, something I really want that we don't get very often is good crosswind. Hopefully
yeah,
on day one, potentially day two. But I don't know. The last few years, I've been disappointed because it hasn't been quite right, or no one's put it in the gutter properly. We have seen the likes of Sarah Gigante struggling sometimes at the
yeah.
back of the peloton, so it can still affect in some ways, but
Mm.
it hasn't ever fully blown apart. So I've always got my fingers crossed for crosswind because that's my favorite. But yeah, I'm skeptical. I'm just hasn't happened for a little while, so I'm not banking on it. But that Stirling stage, it's got the most amount of climbing. So Wollonga has the longest climbs, and there's two of them, and
Mm.
that certainly is a skill set in itself. Your physical ability, is going to dictate how you're going to go up that climb. How many minutes effort is it, Georgie? I can't remember.
Well,
It's like,
for me about 20, but maybe for the others like 9.
yeah, so it's a proper climb, really.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
short for
proper climb.
Euro standards, but it's long
Yeah,
enough to be for climbers only.
yeah,
But the Stirling stage has got maybe 200 meters more climbing elevation throughout the race, and it's just like I've raced through there a bunch of times, and it just kills you. Like the roads are
yeah,
slow. They just the it zaps you. There's heaps of corners. You're kind of on edge as well because it's fast flowing if it's not going uphill. So it's a nervous stage from memory. Georgie, you've got a fresher memory than mine of those races now, but it's a tough one. And yeah, I really like it as well that that's on day three, not day two, because I think it will be really aggressive more than what it was last year. I think we were a little bit let down last year because we were expecting it to be an aggressive course, and people were, not they were saving it a little bit for the next day, I guess. So I'm looking forward to that one because it it always is a tough one, but it always produces an exciting finale as well. I love the sprint on into Sterling because it's always a surprise.
yeah. That Sterling sprint is always, yeah, it's carnage. And then you take the left turn and you go up another climb, and it just like you've gone for the sprint, and then you got to go up this other climb. It's just brutal. So
Yeah.
usually, I remember Brody got off the front there last year. It was a really good move, actually. Could have stayed away, but it's really difficult for a break to stay away on that course because it is just so fast. It's more likely a split will happen than a break will go.
Last year was the stage that Cecilia Tripp Ludwig won and
Correct. Yeah.
took the lead before the final stage.
Yeah.
In case people, yeah, and also we've had like Ruth Winder won on that stage as well in 20, or in a not a similar stage, but in Sterling in 2020, and that's when she won the race overall by
Mhm.
taking that stage. So it's been a decisive stage in the past.
And the what I'm really looking for, I just had a look at the course before for stage 1. They go up around, I cannot pronounce it, but it's a reservoir. They come down from Brighton and they go up around the reservoir and then they sprint to Allinga Beach. And there's a QOM point around. I had a chat with ChatGPT about this actually, and it called it the reservoir wall. So that sounds pretty steep. And I had a look at the Google Maps street view of it, and it is really exposed. And when I was talking to Carly, especially, she was like, that is Echelon City there. If the wind's up, that's going to be really tough. So you've got a climb, you've got crosswinds, and then it's meant to be just a simple sprint finish into Allinga Beach. So after that, so it'll be a really interesting point of the race.
The QOM for the Strava QOM for Wollonga is Gigante, of course. 7 minutes and 53 seconds is the fastest.
7:53. Yeah, I don't think I did that. I also crashed going up Wollonga last year. I was in Group Header though. I didn't
You're
catch
going
it on
so
camera.
slow, you just fell over.
Someone from Saint Michel samurai sworded my front wheel when they got out
Oh
of the saddle.
no. The general's time up Wollonga is like 10 minutes for the women. 9:20 to 10. Carly Taylor is actually the second fastest behind Gigante at 9:23.
She knows it.
I think I'm most excited for the Sterling stage, to be honest, and especially like just depending on how the race is raced on the second stage, and how different teams kind of tackle that. Like I'm envisioning the first lap up Wollonga not being full gas, but I think it, because of how hard the climb is, and it's not short. If it's 9 minutes long, it's not short. So I think there's still going to be a selection over the top of that, and there's not enough space in between the top of the first lap up Wollonga and the bottom of when you started again for the final time for things to come back together, unless it's a group of select riders who are close enough when they get to the top. I think there will be like some breakup of kind of the top riders at the top of the first time up Wollonga, and they might come back together. But if you've been dropped on it already once, you're not going to be a factor necessarily on the second time up. So I think the first lap up they're not going to race it like full gas, but there's still going to be a lot of movement, a lot of separation. But I'm curious how having both of those back to back is going to impact like the time gaps when it comes to that, because Sterling could just be like, that could be such a good stage if there's any manageable time gaps within the GC, and depending on who is close. Because if you look at the start list, we've got like probably the out and out favorite is Neve Bradbury, coming off of the season she had last year. And just depending on how her form is now, she will have better form later in the season. So this will definitely not be like a huge target for her, but she still will want to win it. So she'll be on good enough form that she has a chance. And I think she's probably the out and out favorite for me looking at the start list. And she's got a decent team around her, especially with Chloe Dygert there, who proved to be a pretty incredible domestique at the Tour de France Femme last year. And if you look at kind of other teams, there isn't really another team that has like a pure favorite for me, except maybe Little Trek with Neve Fisher-Black and Spratty. Like that's a pretty incredible duo. Probably the only team on the start list that has multiple climbers who could win the race. A lot of the teams have like one climber and then like a versatile team. Like for example, AG Insurance Sudal, like they have Anya Lowe, who could go really well, but the only climber, quote unquote climber they have is Justine Gerke, who won the climber's jersey at the Tour de France last year and is staged there. So she's an interesting one as well. But I think, yeah, it's such a weird mix of riders on the start list between like who would want to go all the way to TDU, Australians who are, this is like their Tour de France. and yeah, you go into this race and you have no idea how anybody's form is really.
No, it's always a bit of a discovery mission. I would like to call out, and not just because they're my old teammates, but like Silke Smulders and Ella Wiley. Silke had a bit of a season last year and kind of showed herself as a great climber and a great climbing domestique. So for her to be there with Ella, and also she's a Dutchie, so she knows crosswinds and she knows how to ride them really well. So on that Wollonga stage, that was one of the stages last year that threatened with crosswind. So if they do that lap and they come out through again and they're in a select group and there's crosswind again, like Silke can then protect Ella in that situation as well. Because from memory, it's like a big old straight exposed road into the Berg for the second time and first time.
Well, I think it's going to be a great race. I'm really excited.
It's going to be epic. I would love to see a surprise win though, from someone that, like some drama to happen. Yeah, I do think that Sterling stage is going to be divisive.
I don't know. I want the return of Spratty. That's what I want. She won this race back before it was World Tour, and she had such a just a shit year last year between getting injured at the Tour de France and kind of stuff that was going on with her behind the scenes. And so I really want her to, I would love to see her take this again.
Manifest, Abby. Manifest it.
Light a candle.
Yeah, charge your crystals.
There's a full moon this week.
It is a full moon.
The first World Tour leaders jersey too is up for grabs, so that's always nice. And the points. So, you know, I think that's, it's not important these days.
Yeah, I mean, the one team on the start list that I think will be super, super keen on points, regardless of what, if they end up winning a stage or something like that, that's obviously a huge goal. But the point hunters are EF Oatley, Cannondale are so keen to be in the World Tour next year that they'll be after those points. Like if they can get 3 in the top 10, it's a better situation for them than getting like 3rd overall or something like that. So they've got, Kim Kauzo coming off a couple pretty impressive performances last year. Noemi Ruig, who she had some really good rides last year as well. And I think for her, like the Sterling stage looks really, really good. And I'm just super excited to see how Sarah Roy is able to help that team kind of with the amount of experience and knowledge that she has. I'm so excited to see what she can do for that team, and she's going to start at TDU.
Yeah, Roy in pink. It's gonna
Yeah,
be fun. Yeah.
looks great on her. She
It
looked
does
good
look
at
great.
nationals.
It's a bit of a ready pink actually.
It's
not
great.
like a
It's great
pure
for commentary.
Yeah, before you get to Europe and you've got like 3 teams that just look exactly the same.
Yeah, the kits are pretty different this year, which is nice.
Yeah, it's no what was it 2022 where everybody did the beach fade.
Oh yeah, the sunset. Yeah.
That was pretty bad. Anyway, TDU, it's going to be amazing. This weekend starts on Friday. Gracie will be commentating, and that's just the best thing ever. But we also had the Giro route announcement, and we don't have time to dive into the full route right now. So check out the Wheel Talk newsletter. I'm going to break down the route and analyze a bit of what we maybe can expect from the Giro this year in the newsletter. So check it out, escapecollective.com. And yeah, you can wrap this up.
Mention of the victims of the LA fires. Just want to send our know that we're thinking of them. There's some Aussies over there that have been severely impacted. Also just the cycling community in general. So I think Abby's going to put some notes in the show notes of where we can donate. Kate Verino from Zwift has been really vocal about where you can put your money if you want to help out. But yeah, time we band together, tough times over there. So I want to help them out.
I think because Aussies who have been, most of us have seen bushfires or at least, lived through a few bad ones over the years. It's tough to see another country suffering so bad and see so much devastation. So thanks for the shout out, Georgie. I think that's really good to support our brothers and sisters on the bike, no matter what country they're from.
Yeah, and if anyone's had the pleasure of riding around where the Palisades fire is, it's some of the best riding in the country. So really, there's a huge cycling community full of incredible people that are in that area. And just everyone who's been impacted. It's really hard to watch from a distance. But I will throw some links in the show notes if anybody is able to donate or help out. Then that will be in the show notes below.
Good team.
Should we wrap up with what we're obsessed with lately?
Oh yeah, it's my first time doing this.
Ooh.
You didn't get to do it last time?
No.
Do you want to go first?
No, I'm gonna be like at the restaurant and I haven't decided what I want to eat yet, so I'm gonna pass it off to someone.
You're gonna make it great. Okay, I can start. Potentially not a good book to read when you're 39 weeks pregnant, but I've been reading this book called The Frozen River, and it's set in like late 1780s, early 90s Maine, and it's a midwife. And it's incredible. It's so good. I have absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. The Frozen River. Really, really good book. Yeah. There's a lot of it's really sad and traumatic, and trigger warning, there is rape and assault and the dead babies, which I was like, Mom, why did you recommend this book to me? when I was super pregnant. But I it's like the first time that it occurred. No, I'm not going to finish that sentence. Anyway, it's a really, really good book. I think it got a bunch of awards when it came out, and I'm not usually a huge fan of like real life stories, but I think it's a historical fiction, so it's based on a real person with some embellishments thrown in there for the story purposes, but I've really been enjoying it.
Nice.
Put on my Goodreads.
I'm obsessed with just swimming laps at the moment, which has been, I know it's kind of a boring thing to be obsessed with, but I haven't really swum much since I was a kid or a teenager, and I'm really slow at it, and I have to take lots of breaks, but it's really fun, and I don't listen to anything because I'm just trying to focus on my technique and my breathing and not dying in the pool. So it's actually like really meditative, and I'm not in there for that long. And my mum looks after my little boy, and they go splashy in the kids' pool, and it's just like really nice. And that's been like a highlight of my week the last couple of months. And it's summer in Australia, so it's an outdoor pool, and it's just really nice. And my posture is getting better and better from being on a bike for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
So
now I have
happy
to ask the obligatory question: when's the triathlon?
Yeah, I am actually signed up for a triathlon in November, but
Amazing.
I might not do it. But at least like it's fun to have this thing that I'm like semi-training for, because it just I haven't actually had a fitness goal, I mean, since retiring, and it's fun to finally feel like that's a good thing again.
I love that.
What am I obsessed with? Honestly, it's going to be a bit cheesy. I was going to say an artist, so can I do two? But I just thought of another one.
There are no
07
rules here.
Okay. 07 London artist. They're a duo. They do like trip hop kind of music. Just really good to kind of mellow out to. I've been listening to them on repeat for about 4 months. So their radio on Spotify is awesome. And then secondly, like honestly, just being back in Melbourne after so much time away and like reconnecting with friends and family. Obsessed with that. So I think relationships and friendships are like how I kind of manage, like how I measure my wealth, and to be able to like really charge that again has been really wonderful.
I like that.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good thing to be obsessed with, always. You two will be back with Matt Deneve to talk over TDU, and we will be back next week for more podcasting. Thanks you both so much for chatting with me. And the season has started. We're into 2025. World Tour racing is just around the corner.
Whoop, whoop.
Crazy.
Before we know it, we'll be like deep in Holy Week.
It's gonna happen.
The cobbles and everything.
And then the classics are over, and then I just get depressed.
Yeah. The classics are over, and we have to turn our attention to Spain to watch the Spanish stage races, which are really, really good, but it's a very abrupt shift from like the classics that are like so full on and so exciting from start to finish to then like a week-long stage race.
Yeah, and you know, Belgian cobbles to Spanish roundabouts in the wet.
Both treacherous.
Yeah.
As we saw last year.
Yeah.